So
Hi.
this is an exciting time. I feel like with all of our conversations, it's always like we're just passing each other, you know? Like we have like a 2-week overlap or something like that. And
This time,
then,
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, this time, but also like the last time as
Yeah.
well, you know? And you were like a pioneer on many fronts for like Cambridge ecosystem because like you were first person that I was really introduced to, you know, and became friends with in Seoul. This is back in like September. And then first person to do the podcast, right? First person to hold the Cambridge events in the Bay Area. So you have a lot of Cambridge credentials. So thanks for entertaining these. You're the first recurring podcast guest, you know?
Right. At the EO office too.
Yes. So thank you. You just got back into Seoul. How do you feel overall?
I'm a little tired, but I just got my caffeine, so I'm good.
Okay, good. Well, welcome back. There's going to be some people listening to this conversation that didn't listen to the very first Cambridge podcast, and at that point, I didn't have a very good like setup. I was still getting a feel for things, and now I feel like even though I'm still using iPhones, the production quality
you have
has
a whole system.
has improved a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a little bit of background about both your like upbringing, childhood? You don't have to do like the full thing because I can point them to the first conversation that we had, but just a little bit of background there, and then also professionally what you do as well.
All right, so I'm Hannah. I grew up in Korea until I was 11, and then studied abroad in Canada for 2.5 years, and also went to boarding school in Massachusetts for 4 years. I went to a university in Boston for 1 semester, but then came back to Korea to pursue education here for the rest of my college, and then so that's sort of how Korean like living journey has been so far.
Yep.
And professionally, what I do is I work at a startup media company called EO. We create content about founders, investors. We usually do video storytelling where we interview founders on what kind of failures they had and how they have been managing different parts of their company journeys to build great companies. So that's the channel that we're building, EO. And I've been at the company for 3.5 years, right after graduating my college. And right now, what I'm doing is I go back and forth from Seoul and San Francisco, maybe every 1 or 2 months I'd be here and then I'd be in San Francisco. And my role at EO is mostly community building, managing partnerships, doing business development for EO as we're trying to build a global media, not just a Korean media regarding startups.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you have been with EO for 3.5 years, right? In terms of like your own observations of startup ecosystem, like I guess specifically around like Korean startup ecosystem, because you're bouncing around between Seoul and San Francisco. One of the things that I wanted to get your take on is, I guess, when did you start taking trips to SF, like Bay Area? Was that when you had first started, or it was a little bit after?
It was much after. So when I first joined EO, we didn't have a global channel. We call it the global channel because it's in English and it's for a global audience.
Yeah.
So we built that channel just, I think, 2 years ago, and we got this place in Palo Alto about 1.5 years ago, where we kind of started living in this co-living environment where all of our team members would live in the same house. It's literally a house, and in the living room we would set up desks and we would work there as the co-working space. So we set that up, but for me, when I first joined EO, I joined as like a live streaming producer for the Korean channel. So I was working on events and like stuff here. But I moved my team to the global team 1.5 years ago, I want to say. So the fall of 2023.
Okay.
And then I started. entirely changed my role into building a community for our subscribers worldwide, and decided that since we have a place in Palo Alto, and maybe it's a good thing for me to go there, base myself there, make friends with the founders who are there, who already know our channel, and try to see what kind of more in-person activities we could be doing. So it was just around the winter of 2024 that I went over for the first time. So it's only been a little bit over a year since I started living this life of 2 months in Korea, 2 months in San Francisco kind of life.
I see. And like between then and now, do you feel like you have seen, I guess, like trends or different themes coming up again and again? Because it does seem like this pipeline of Korean founders, like born and raised here, trying to make it big, that a lot of them are going to Silicon Valley. And I'm just wondering from a thematic perspective, if you've seen that like intensify, if you've seen that maybe like pull back a little bit, like your overall observations on the volume of events and the amount of interesting people and the Korean companies and their presence in like Silicon Valley area, like what your observations have been?
Yeah, I feel like our entire team is feeling that there are so many Korean founders that are trying to come over to the Bay Area, much more than before too. I mean, of course, even before their founders always wanted to be in the Bay. But I think even with the government efforts, I think it's become a very big agenda in the Korean startup ecosystem to say we have to go global. I think it's something that a lot of, like with AI and all of these different language barriers also coming down, competition is no longer just within the domestic market. Like we have to build a product that is globally oriented from day one, or else if the global product comes in, you're doomed. So I think a lot more founders who used to build in tech are realizing that they have to target a bigger market from the very beginning, and therefore they have been coming over. And EO House has kind of served the very purpose of helping founders do that, because we would have some empty beds in the bedrooms and we'd say, okay, why don't we charge them like, I don't know, like $90, and then they can like have dinner with us and meet other founders through our network. And it's been a huge community kind of building environment where so many founders got to be connected through our platform. So, and then from that, we've seen that it's not just us doing it anymore. Like there are VCs that are coming over to build their own houses.
Yes.
There's like Asan Nanum Jedan, their Asan Foundation. They're also building this huge place called Maru, which is like right across the street from here. It's in Korea, but they're building a similar version in San Francisco too. So I think a lot of Korean entities are realizing the need to support founders growing globally, and there's more of these like community houses also kind of popping up, which is really cool to see.
Let me ask you a little bit about because there's some other topics that I want to get to with like the whole K-Bridge events and all that fun stuff. But just on the topic of the EO Studio House, like in terms of its history, like how long it's been in existence for, and also I feel like maybe it's just because I'm friends with you and we have maybe some friends in the same circle, but I feel like there's a kind of a legendary status of like the EO House, and I still haven't had the opportunity to go yet, even though we've had like a couple of calls where you've been there. So can you tell me a little bit about the background of the EO House, like how many people it can fit and the types of founders that end up coming through? And you have been running it for the past year, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
I'm
my
just
side
curious
job.
about that whole experience too.
Yeah, we kind of joke that I'm like my 50th role at EO Studio is to run this guest house of EO House. So it's like a 4-bedroom house that we initially didn't intend to make into a community house to begin with. We got the house a year and a half ago, just under the impression that, okay, we want to be based in Palo Alto. We don't want to be visiting. Like, why can't we have a space that's more fixed? Because every time we were traveling to the States to conduct a bunch of interviews, that's how we used to do it. Like a team of 3 would fly over to the States with all of the equipment. We would film for about a month, and have packed libraries of just interview footage, and then we would go home and we would edit and publish. That was sort of the cycle, but we decided that's like a lot of work, and why can't we have a place where we can put the store our filming gears and also invite the founders that we interview to EO House and film at our living room. So let's try to. And of course, it was a huge decision because it's a lot of fixed costs that we're willing to put into. And sometimes the house would be empty for a month because we won't be there, but then we would be just paying the rent. So it was a very, are we there yet? Can we do this? But we just kind of went ahead with the decision, mainly with Taeyong's sort of conviction that this was the right thing. Taeyong's our founder. So we got that house for that purpose of us just being more permanently based. But just because there happened to be more beds than we expected, it just kind of sprang out as an idea. Like, hey, someone is visiting and she's looking for a place to stay. She could stay with us. So that just kind of is how it initially began. And we didn't have any rules about where to stay or how to manage living together. So apparently it was a very chaotic environment, even more chaotic than now in the beginning.
Yeah.
But we have distilled some rules by now. And right now we've hosted up to, I think, 11, 12 founders living in the same house at the same time. And it's usually in January when we have like CES, and there's a huge Korean founders community called 82 Startups and United Korean Founders. They've done like hundreds of people coming to events for Korean founders. So whenever that happens, all of these founders would come to our place for like an after party. So we would house them. So housing is one part of it, but then also because the house has quite a nice living room, we would kind of move out all of the furniture and host meetups from time to time. Sometimes VC visiting wants to host an event just to meet more founders locally based, and then we'd kind of host it with them. So there's been a series of these events that we've done so far, and just realize how important it is to have a space to be able to like run a community, and also just it's very good for me because building a community for founders, I have to really understand what their life cycle is and just the kind of mindset they have, but some of it you only can learn when you live with them, right? So it's been a huge learning experience for me to see all of these founders who stay with me, to like seeing how they work, how they go into these meetings, how 24/7 they are, and just kind of witnessing the hustle that everybody talks about. So that's been really good for, I think, our team's motivation as well.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm sure there are people that are going to be maybe listening to the conversation and wonder like a little bit about the EO Studio House and like if they're a founder interested in going to the Bay, like how they could
contact
how they
me.
Could join. Are there any prerequisites or like background requirements that you guys have on like who's allowed, who's not allowed, or not really?
Just hopefully like you're a good person so that you don't like use up the house and abuse it. But mostly like it's like the biggest thing is that you have to be a founder or someone who's building. So that's the only thing, to be honest. And we don't have like a website where you can check it out and just apply. Because it is also a living space for our team, we do want to keep it more safe for our team as well. So it's not like out there. So it's usually through referrals. Like if you contact me, then then I'd be like, oh, cool. Like we have these rooms available, and we'd kind of chat. But we are moving to SF City probably in May. So the location may change in the coming few weeks, but we're probably going to do the same thing while we're in SF, even more, I think.
You think the amount of like opportunities or events or like community building, just like the ideation, like a lot of that, there's more in when you guys move to SF compared to right now in Palo Alto?
Yeah, just because Palo Alto is great, but we have a lot of South Bay, big tech people coming over all the time. Also, because we originally started out as a Korean media, we have a very big fandom around the Korean startup ecosystem. But I think it's time for us to also be more active in building the non-Korean startup founders community, mixing with our existing community. And so we really want to make it not just about Korean founders living together. We want to make it more like a global hub for founders to learn from other founders.
Interesting.
So we're going to have this rule when we move to SF where you can only speak English within these particular hours. And we're going to be hosting a bunch of dinners and a lot more multicultural founders coming in. That's sort of the goal for the next chapter.
Wow, fascinating. Yeah, do you, because even with the Cambridge stuff, one of the pieces of feedback that I've gotten is that and this isn't everybody, this is like a select few people that are pretty accomplished, but they would tell me something like, I have a really deep network of like Korean people in Bay Area and Korean people in Seoul, but what I'd really like to get more like practice is building like my like foreigner network, right? And do you see that coming up a lot, like interest-wise, of Korean founders in EO House and just like the broader SF Korea ecosystem?
Yes, I think the more serious you get about building in, like for a global audience, I think the more you feel, okay, I'm in my comfort zone. Like I'm talking to the people who share similar cultures with me, share the same language with me. And of course, that's so comforting. It's so nice to be able to have a drink with all of the Korean founders who feel the pain that you have.
Yeah.
But I think even for our team, we feel that we need to get ourselves more out there. We need to be more uncomfortable and just expand the network in a different way. So there was a very small subscribers dinner I hosted last year, which was more multicultural than before. So I made Taeyong prepare a presentation about how he founded EO. And we kind of were in our little kitchen and we had about 10 people who came over and they were like Indian founders. They were like from Japan. They were from like Poland. Like it was very different from before. And that dinner was amazing because it just kind of it just gave our team the confidence that we have all these viewers count on YouTube, but they actually exist in real life. And these are the people that you're building the content for. So that's been a really good experience. So amazing.
So literally within the past like 3-4 days, we've had communications. You were in San Francisco, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have this podcast is it's like a debriefing opportunity in public of the K-Bridge in the Bay Area event. So this is the first like meetup that has been hosted that isn't in Seoul and where I wasn't present for. How did things go overall? I was really excited because you guys were able to host it at Stanford, which is my alma mater, and like big thanks to Dr. So Kim for allowing that to be possible. But in terms of how things played out, like I had joined the Zoom call, you know, and gave the quick presentation. I feel like it's always awkward, like doing that kind of dynamic if you're not in person. And I didn't get to see like the end result of like how the conversation was going.
Right.
But you had sent me pictures, and it seemed like people were doing a really good job, like mingling and meeting each other. Like how was it overall?
First of all, it was really fun, and I think it turned out much better than I anticipated, to be honest, which I'm really grateful for. And I think it's all due to the people who came to the event. So we had about, I think, 38 signups. And then I think about 30 people showed up.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Maybe a little less. I don't know. I didn't really count. I was all nervous, but like we had a pretty good turnout, and the location that Professor So booked for us was in this like a very tiny amphitheater type of classroom setting where it's like everybody kind of like circles around this one presenter.
Yeah.
So that was actually very nice because the way I envisioned that this event would be, I had similar worries. Like you would be joining online.
Yeah.
Like I would put a Zoom screen of you up on the projector.
Yes.
Like, would that be really weird? I wasn't even sure if it was gonna be okay.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be much better than having just like a recorded video of you and just like playing it. So I was glad that the timing worked out, so you were able to join real time. And then when you joined, I mean, It was good. I mean, I really liked the stuff you shared about your own background and why Cambridge started and the kind of statistics behind it that make us more significant in terms of the community's impact. So I thought that was a good starter. And to settle my worry about it being a little weird, I just thought that, okay, it all goes back to the conversation we were having through Kakao Talk when you talked about how so many people give you this advice about having to have a very specific target audience in the community. And then how you feel that that's all valid and sane, but also you have this kind of instinct that tells you that, but you're so curious about such a diverse group of people that you feel a bit hesitant about pinning down a specific target, which I really resonated with, especially after watching a lot of your podcasts, because I loved every part of the conversations where it was about a different person's upbringing, background, and how that shaped who they are. It's so interesting, and it brought me back all these memories from my high school, which was a boarding school, and we had a very small percentage of international students at the place. And we would usually do these events where it was called Cultural Identity Night, and all of our we would gather in a very small room next to the dining hall, and maybe 2-3 people at a time for per event would come up on stage and share something about themselves. And the philosophy behind it was that identity works like a muscle. So it's the more you practice it and the more you say it out loud, the stronger it becomes. And it's also due to change. So the more I talk about how I am right now, who I think I myself am right now, it's going to strengthen my understanding of myself. And it is with the understanding that I can say I'm this person today, but tomorrow I can be different. And feeling that you're in a safe enough space to say that is very important in this exercising of the identity. So those events were really powerful in shaping how I understand the world and the people that I live with, especially because like you would meet someone and then you're like, she doesn't really click with me. We're very different. And then I would have a very vague understanding of what kind of person she is. But through those nights, I learned so much about her background that made me feel so much respect for this person's journey. And I think that kind of storytelling helps us be more kind to each other, to be more understanding, accepting. So I really believe in the power of these individual stories. And I thought your podcast was doing that. And therefore, it all makes sense. It's a long story, but therefore, it all makes sense that you're not targeting it to specific groups, at least for now. So that was sort of my understanding of the power that Cambridge could have, is that we could bring a bunch of random people together who the only thing they share is maybe a Korean heritage, but through the different stories that we can highlight, we would be able to have a much deeper understanding of each other, and the diversity would be the plus. Like it would be like a good thing. So for this event, I thought you would be up on screen. You would talk about Cambridge, and I wanted to set the event tone to kind of make it an environment where people can talk a bit more deeply about their upbringing, their identity. So I thought in order to do that, I should share first. So after actually you left the call because I told you to go away, I was like, bye, Tiger. And then we did some Q&A and I was like, bye. And then like I made you leave because it'd be weird if you were just like hovering
Floating
over
on
me.
the screen.
Then what I did was I said, so I shared a little bit about this experience with the Cultural Identity Night event, and then the thing about philosophy and identity, and then I shared a little bit about my Korean journey. So how I grew up, the family that I grew up with, and how my relationship to my Korean heritage kind of changed for the first time when I was in Canada. And it's like what I shared in the very first episode that I did with you, where I used to be very reluctant to admit that I was Korean because I wanted to fit in and I wanted to learn English quickly. I would kind of not talk to other Koreans and pretend that I don't speak Korean. So I talked about how I used to do that. And then after a certain event, that whole thing changed. And how that also is reflected in how my company, EO, is also facing our Korean background, because we used to think that, well, I at least used to think that we needed to look more like an American company, that because we make content and we want to be more like, we want to look as if we are based in San Francisco. Like that was sort of the idea. But recently just learning that, no, just owning up to our backgrounds and using that as a leverage to get into certain communities faster is actually better for us. Like we need to leverage what we have is something that I recently learned as our team. So I kind of talked about the parallel between how like my personal experience and the professional experience has been about the Korean heritage.
Yeah.
So I shared a little bit about that. And then so it was like, bear with me as I share this story. And then I just like shared this story, like just in that podium, and then told everyone, okay, so this is me just being a little more open about my background. And I hope you do the same as you break into groups for now and talk to each other. So let's talk less about like, what do you do in your job? And I mean, you can always do that, but more about just like how you're navigating your identity, some things that maybe is troubling for you. I hope this is a safe enough space to do it. Was sort of the tone I wanted to set. So I would say that. And then I made people break into groups and then they would have to talk to each other.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then I think it worked out as I hoped, because a lot of the feedback at the end that I got was because I shared this story, they felt very encouraged to share a lot more about themselves. It like set the tone. And one of the attendees told me that she has been to many events, but she's never been to one where she got to share so much about herself in a very safe setting, even when there are a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yay!
That's amazing.
So I think it was great.
Had you done anything like this before? Like just in terms of setting up the tone of the event by sharing your own story and then letting people do like their own conversation afterwards, like for EO events or anything like that? Have you tried anything like this?
No.
Okay.
So this was a risk for me. Like I wasn't sure if it was gonna work out.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd look like a girl who just kind of babbled. And I was honestly very nervous about just speaking in front of these people, because like I'm good with like people, but when I get up on stage, I tend to get nervous actually. So
As do I.
my voice just like, so I was really nervous that I would get that tremble in my voice, because then it kind of messes it all up and I can't share the story as I want to.
Yeah.
But thankfully that day, I wasn't as nervous. It was like everybody was sort of just like willing to listen, and I had a podium in front of me, so that felt very reassuring. Like I had something to kind of hold on to as I spoke.
Yes.
So yeah.
Wow. And after the like breakout sessions where you shared your story and then people were just mingling, was that just self-organized, or did you do anything to like have them pair up in groups? Because it looked like just based on the photos that I had seen, that people were like in good conversation with like a handful of people. I was wondering if you had done anything like to facilitate that, or if that just happened on its own.
Right. I wish I could have done a bit more, but then like I was I wasn't prepared enough. So I was just kind of relying on these people to have good vibes, and they look like all really amazing people. So I just told them like, because before this whole session started, people were already sitting and they had been already talking to each other a little bit. So I thought, okay, like to begin with, because they've already been talking to each other, I'll mix it up from the very beginning. So I said, people from this side of the room go over there, people from that side of the room go over there, and just pair up in maybe 4 or 5 people's groups. And then they would do it. And then if there was 1 or 2 people who were not in a group, then I'd find a group for them and then like tell them where to sit. And then they would just kind of self-facilitate. And every group kind of had someone who was more willing and more extroverted who was willing to facilitate. So that was really lucky that dynamics worked out.
Yep.
And then so we would, and then everybody, so I kind of joined in a few groups while they were talking. And then it seemed like they were sharing, like, someone would say, does anybody have like a fun immigration story? And then they'd share a lot about, so like how they're like something from their parents that they heard from their friends that was really interesting. They would be sharing that. And then also kind of going around talking about when they first came to the United States or which generation of their family came to the United States for the first time.
Yeah.
They would kind of talk about that. So, and then would talk about the different dynamics of the different, immigrants, who came here. Like some of them were like professors, some of them were laundromats. Like it was very different, right? So they would kind of talk about these different groups and the history behind it, which was really informative. And everybody has their background, so they all have something that they can share to the group. Like someone was adopted, someone was came here when she was 2. Like it was very different. So yeah.
Wow, incredible. It's funny because even thinking about like other Cambridge events, one of the things that I had thought about is like maybe I should just do meetups where there isn't any presentation piece and people kind of just show up and interact with each other. And from an organizational perspective and management perspective, it's a lot easier to do that because you don't have to worry about the logistics of the speaking and the agenda and all that stuff. It's kind of like people just show up. But what I have realized as well is that even with the past few like Cambridge events that I've hosted, the before and after of like a presentation piece makes a big difference, especially when that presentation piece is like somebody just sharing their life story or like what they're most passionate about, because then people feel comfortable opening up. And I remember like the LinkedIn post that you had a while back. I don't remember the exact details, but it was kind of something like people show up to a community or partake in an event first because of like the individual that's involved and their personal experiences, right? And I think that there is a tendency for whether it's like businesses or organizations to just be like, we're going to have, we're going to throw money at this. We're going to bring like these professional speakers and it's going to be an amazing event. Whereas it can just be one person that shares their story in a very like authentic, vulnerable manner that like sets a tone for an incredible event. And it could be at like a very basic like auditorium, right? And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And I feel like you experimenting with this Cambridge in the Bay event is a really good example of that.
Yeah, and you let me do it. So
Yes.
I remember when we were first talking about ever doing it, I was thinking, but are you okay with this? Because this is like your community and then I'm hosting an event without you. So are you okay with this? And then you're like, yeah, do it.
Yeah. I figure like just try as many things as possible. Some of the stuff is inevitably going to fail and like kind of fall on its face, and you just learn from it, iterate, try again the next time is kind of my approach. But this is a good example where it seemed like it was valuable to people. I'm curious from the background's perspective. Like one of the things that I had hoped is that there would be a mix of Korean heritage people from different backgrounds, whether it's like the industry that they're working in, the life stage that they're in, or whether they're Korean American or like Korean born and raised in the Bay Area. But I couldn't tell, just based on the visuals of like who was there. Did it tend to skew in one direction or the other?
I don't know exactly. Of course, I don't know exactly.
Right.
But to my surprise, there were more Korean Americans than I expected, which was actually somewhat of a good sign for me because I only am really attached to the Korean communities. Like EO has been mostly about like Korean Founders Network. Yes. And I actually, when promoting the event, I was kind of intentional not to spread it to all of these different Korean communities because I didn't want this to be like a Korean language event. Like I wanted this to be in English. Yes. Like I wanted people to speak English and talk to the non-Koreans in the room as well. Because if not, then there's nothing different from all of the other Korean events that are happening in the Bay Area, which serves its own great purpose of uniting them. So I thought K-Bridge had to be different from the other Korean events in that it will be English speaking, and it will be welcoming of the non-Korean communities, because that's like the whole point. So I was very unsure how this would play out, but to my surprise, there were people who randomly found out about the event through LinkedIn. Like someone liked it, and then like they just found out, who were born in East Bay, like, and had lived there for all her life.
Wow.
So it was, to my happy surprise, there was that nice dynamic of people from an American background with a very interesting diaspora story that they could tell. That was also very interesting to the Koreans who were in the room. So to my surprise, that was great. And we also had a pretty diverse spectrum of careers, because like there were professors, and then there were students, and then there were everyone in between. There were 2 junior product designers, and then there was 1 senior product designer, and then there was a professor who teaches product design. Like it was like a whole spectrum of these different people gathering, which was very interesting.
Yeah. You know, and going back to the point of the question that I often get is, with K-Bridge, like, who is it for, right? And like, I think there's a problem with my curiosity, where it's like, I want to have conversations with people that are much older than me, much younger than me, all different types of backgrounds, all different types of interests, because I personally learn a lot from it. So it's very difficult for me to like niche down. I think there is something to be said where if you're hosting events regularly, like on a weekly basis or something like that, and it's just a smattering of people, it can be a little bit chaotic or overwhelming for people. But I think that even doing like monthly gatherings or like every quarter, and you get exposed to a diversity of people and they're willing to share their stories, then the experience like completely changes, right? And so I think it's hard for people sometimes to make sense of the K-Bridge stuff, but when they go to an event or they like listen to the podcast and they can see all these people of different backgrounds, it makes a lot more sense to them of like the value that it can provide. And I also think like it's crazy to think that if you look at Korean heritage population around the world, that like 15% or so are like Korean diaspora, right? And I tend to think there's a lot more people in Korea that have some like Korean diaspora relationship or heritage or something like that. And it's just because there's not that much discourse going on where they're like publicly sharing like their backstory and their past experiences, that people don't realize how much diversity there is, you know? So I start getting connected to people in Korea that are from like Brazil or Germany or Australia. And had I just had like a very brief interaction with them, just like on the street in passing at like a professional networking event, I just never would have known that they have some interesting background. And that's why I think that these types of events, or even like the podcast conversations where people can like more publicly share more about themselves, it has a lot of potential, is my suspicions.
I agree. I completely agree. And like, it's like the eye-opening experience every once in a while. It's like going to like a humanity conference. Like you hear like personal journeys. Like, of course, it's not like a connecting founders with investors kind of event, but it's like something that kind of shakes things up for you, like your like usual environment and circle of friends. Like every once in a while, I think like people need to get shaken up a little bit and then find different people to talk to. That's so important for your just mindset of just realizing how small of a bubble that you live in when you are just in one cycle. So
one of the things as well is like, in terms of the agenda or mission of trying to help people of Korean heritage be more international and develop friends from all different types of backgrounds as well. I do think like if you're Korean born and raised and you could speak some English, like going to the Korean Americans first as like a gateway, you know, is a really powerful thing. And I was having a conversation with somebody who reached out, I think it was like over LinkedIn, or just took interest in the K-Bridge ecosystem. And he was a student at Minerva University, like the new experimental kind of university. And he was telling me like, you know, for Minerva, we have like a semester in one city and then we move to another and then another. And once I make it out to the Bay Area, I'd love to connect with as many Korean Americans as I can. And I feel like making those links will allow people to feel more comfortable, because then when you find the Korean American, you can just like tap into their network of like their foreigner friends, you know, and then it becomes valuable. And one of my favorite things is like when my US friends, like it could be like white American or Asian American, or just different heritage people come to Seoul, and then I can introduce them to Korean people. I feel like that's where it becomes most fun for me.
Yeah, definitely. And now you're getting a hang of where things are. Like you're basically becoming more and more Korean.
I don't know if I go that far yet. Especially with like Cambridge it has been my outlet to have interesting English speaking conversation with other people. So the whole learning Korean stuff with all that I've got going on has not been prioritized to the extent that it should. But assuming I get back into the country, you know, that will change. So you have also been involved with many other projects, right? Events related and not. Like one of the cool things that I think we were talking a little bit about back and forth was the you deciding to like organize your own personal events as well. I mean, there's always like a blur of personal, professional stuff that goes on. But like the I guess like Korean women professionals, Bay Area kind of like side projects that you've started. Can you share a little bit about what you experimented with and how that journey was as well?
Yeah, actually, I need to figure out a way to make more sustainable efforts like this, first of all, but because I haven't been able to focus a lot more on it.
Yeah.
But like just sharing very simply is there are a few just that are in my mind, but something that I've been mostly thinking about recently is we call it Bay Joyce, because there is this Korean community, professional women's career community called Hey Joyce in Korea. It was founded by this amazing founder named Nari Lee, and she happened to be visiting the Bay Area in I think end of January or early February during the Lunar New Year phase. And while she was here, I invited about 20 women professionals in the Bay Area to dine with us at this place that Korean woman founder named Hee-ji Kim provided for us. And the reason why that gathering happened in the very beginning was because there was this United Korean Founders gathering in January, which had, I think, 1,200 Korean founders joining at this Fox Theater in Redwood City, which is a huge venue where amazing events happen. So it was this kind of very big event where so many Korean founders were gathering. And we had this separate dinner after that event where all of the staff members kind of joined to have like a after party. And at that after party, there were 2 girls and 2 women, and then like 25 men, and then so we like that's fine, like that's like what tech world is kind of. It's a good representation of the reality. But we just thought that, oh my god, there's just not enough women in this space. Like I think I've always felt it, even looking at our channel EO, like we have so many male founders that we featured, but very less female founders. Also because there are less of them, but still. So but I think at that dinner space, because it's like a closed dinner space environment, I felt it really like hitting me. So Hee-ji, who is the founder that I work with, she runs like a beauty care product company. And she said, if you bring in more 20-something young women to my house, I'm happy to host a dinner. So like gather them around and I'll provide the space and the food. So I was like, that's amazing. So we kind of went out reaching out to a bunch of women professionals that we knew of, the 2 girls that were there. And then hence happened the very first gathering we called it Bay Joyce because Nari was also participating in the dinner. And I only imagined it to be a small dinner, but everybody was so happy to have found each other. There were 3 women founders who were co-founding their companies with their husbands. Like 3 people who have found companies with their husbands in one space.
Wow.
And they all have like 1-year-old kid, like 2-year-old kids. So they were like, oh my God, how are you holding up? And they would be talking about that.
Wow.
So I think the concentration of these very relatable, like people who relate to each other,
Yes.
people was very well concentrated that I thought, oh, like there is so much value in connecting people like this. And it's surprising how they haven't been connected to each other before, probably because they were super busy with their own lives.
Yeah.
So we decided to say, like create a little group chat, and we would host events every once in a while. And I also had this talk with Hiji talking about it's great to have wine socials and do more like dinners, but let's see how we can help this, make this a community to help women's more professionally, more practically. So we have been talking about how to do that with upcoming events and things. But things are slow because like we all have our own lives to get to. But I think it's something that I want to be a part of, because I think it was just this realization that all of the women founders who were at the space, they were talking about the struggles of having to raise a kid along with your business. But it kind of hit me that day that I live with a bunch of male founders, right? Yeah. And I listen to their conversations all the time. And they also have kids. Yeah. But they never talk about their kids at these dinner tables. It's not a big like thing sitting at the back of their heads because it's somehow being taken care of. And maybe they're also participating in it, but it's not something that they're so worried about that they talk about it all the time. Sure. But why is it that all these female founders are only talking about this? Like they're not talking about their business. They're talking about their kids. And like it's I feel happy that they're able to find someone to share that pain with. Yeah. But also, why should that be their only thing to talk about? They should be also excited about talking about business opportunities. Why isn't that happening here? Was sort of my impression from the dinner. So I'm hoping that the more we progress into it, like we can create something where we can more focus on the career, the profession, and the business instead of just empathizing with each other's struggles. Like that's a basic, but hopefully there's more that we can add to it.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, even with like Cambridge and the challenges of like pinning it down to a niche, like one of my hopes is that people will self-organize, and there are going to be specific like captains that come up and say like, I'm really passionate about this. Like Tiger, if you can send me all the people that have these kinds of profiles, I'd love to organize an event around it. And I think that's where things become a lot more fun. And so even if it's just, I know you have an insane amount going on, and it's like even with some of the events that I host, I've only been doing like 3 or 4 of them, and they've been pretty big events, but the amount of time and energy required just to put things together is crazy. And you have that like basically every week, it feels like. So I don't know how you keep up with it, but I do hope that you can keep it going, even if it's just like once a quarter or like 2 times per year, because it is sometimes surprising to me, even though like the Korea ecosystem, like startup wise and like Korean diaspora, it is small because people know of each other. But at the same time, I am always surprised by coming across people who are working on a specific project. And then I'm like, oh, do you know this person who's working on this project or this person who's working on this project? Because there'd be value, like you guys would be able to share experiences together. And they're like, no, I haven't heard of that person. You know, so it still feels like there is a ton of opportunity. And when you were explaining the fact that there's like multiple women founders who are married and have, you know, young kids that aren't connected with each other, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah. It's like the same, I guess, surprise you probably had. Like, why don't you guys know each other when you came to Korea, who are both like English speaking and cool people? Yeah. I think that was sort of my also surprise. Like, why don't you guys know each other?
100%. One thing I did want to ask you about as well is I feel like I got very lucky in terms of my first or second week meeting you because your attitude or your approach is very let's try X, Y, or Z and just see what happens, you know. And I do wonder like how much of that you attribute to like your own personality versus your like experience abroad and being like exposed to like Canadian and American culture of like because when I have conversations with other people here in Korea, they might be like ambitious or very intelligent or working on cool things as well, but from a getting to idea to execution and just experimentation phase, it takes them a lot longer. You know, it's like there's some hesitation, there's some overthinking, there's some, I guess, just like less willingness to act at some points in time. And it's not everybody for sure, but I do feel like, oh, I got a very lucky like meeting you for the first time and was curious like if you've always been that way. Because I mean, even with this Cambridge meetup, I was just like, yeah, just try it, put it together, see what happens. And you're just like, okay, let's do it, you know? Or like the even the Cambridge launch event that happened in December, like I wasn't even really thinking that events would be a part of it because it just felt like a headache to me. But you were like, hey, you should do it. And then you brought friends, a lot of support with the organization piece of it, which I'm like very grateful for. But I'm curious like how you would explain away your your approach or your mindset on that front.
Huh.
Have you thought about that much?
No.
Do you notice it? Because
No.
I certainly notice it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just natural for you, huh?
But I mean, I guess like in terms of just first of all the personality part of it though is just I was a loud kid growing up. Like I think it's the love I got when I was a very young kid. My grandmother loving me so much, and like it was all me wanting to sing in front of my family. Like I always wanted to sing whenever we had family gatherings. So I was a very extroverted, outgoing kid from the very beginning. So I think this thing about being excited about people and new things and like being a part of something and representing something has always been something in me as a kid. So, you know, when in elementary school, they would have these class presidents or like homeroom captains, so to speak. They would have these elections within the class. It's like a thing in Korea. Like every class has their home class captain and like a co-captain or something. And I had to be the captain. Like I was the kind of kid who was like, I have to be elected. Like I want to be the captain.
You were a born leader.
Yes. I was lust for power was too big. Like, I want to be the one who tells everyone to like quiet. I want to be the one who is like loved by the teacher. Like I had that whole desire to be like a leader, I guess. So that part of me, I think, is personality. In terms of execution, I'm not sure because I feel like even up till high school, which was when I was living in the States, I wasn't much of an execution person. I was a very just like, I always just study, just very disciplined. Like I never slept in on weekends. I would go to cafes at 5 a.m. and just sit there till I finished all of my homework. I was that kind of girl who just never like left campus to do anything or like misbehaved.
Yep.
So it was never about like doing new projects for me. But I think it was mostly during my college years when I was experimenting a lot with these entrepreneur clubs, doing different projects, and me also feeling that my future was very unclear and being kind of anxious that I need to do something to prove that I can make something happen was the bigger drive behind it. I remember because my major is culture design management, and like what kind of a major is that? so I think in second year of college, I would ask my dad, Father, I'm majoring in culture design management. I have no idea what the heck I'm learning. And I feel like I'm not going to have a job. It's like, what should I do? And my dad would say, Hannah, like, you don't have to learn anything in college. Like, do something of your own. Like, make your own projects. Like, do your own thing. Like, don't rely on college to teach you the skills to be employed because it's impossible. You're not in an engineering school, so you can't. He's like basically telling me like you can't code, so you should do stuff on your own.
Wow.
But that was a big wake up call for me. Like, oh, I have to build my own projects. Like, I have to have my own stuff going on. So I guess that kind of transferred to EO and all that.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, your dad was a wise man.
Yes.
It's interesting because in the investing landscape, there's always a trade-off between like risk and return, right? And it's like, well, if you want to have higher returns, you have to pay for that in some way. And oftentimes it's like the amount of volatility or uncertainty that you're willing to handle. And I feel like if you look at the risk profile of most like people that were born and raised here, not to like, obviously everybody's different and they have their unique quirks, but I do think that there is a general framework where people are a bit risk averse. And I think the interesting thing in like observing you is that you have like a pretty high capacity for like tolerating like chaos and uncertainty. And I think that is like a really big advantage if you're like building something. And I think the hosting Cambridge in the Bay events, you know, as the first one to do it and then doing it in the way you did of like sharing your personal story is like a very good example of that. And even like the story that you were sharing with me before we started recording of your flight back to Korea, right? Is like, I think that's a good example where the guy that you had met, I guess you can explain the story, but the guy that you had met wanted to make conversation with you because he viewed himself as an introvert and was trying to break out of that mold, right? And he had just spent some time in the States and he's like of Korean heritage, right? So I feel like that's a really good example of more of the types of people that I meet is like there's a general tendency not to push themselves out of their comfort zone and do a little bit more risk-taking or experimentation. You know?
Yeah. I guess so. That flight was so funny.
what was explain what happened on the flight?
So I never talk to people on planes. Like
Yeah.
I like to just sleep and watch Netflix. I had a whole like series downloaded just so I could watch it myself.
Yeah.
Because it's like the one airplane mode I get, right? So it was like a 3 people aisle, like seat, and then this guy was at the window seat and I was in the middle seat and the seat next to me was empty. So I realized before the takeoff, oh, I should move over because then we'll both have more space. But then I felt, like, will he be a bit like offended that I just like move over? Because I don't know, like it's just like me being like overly considerate, just thinking, oh, maybe he'll be maybe I need to at least make gesture that I'm gonna move for the sake of us having more space and not because you smell, right? So I just kind of like was like, 저 옆으로 갈게요, and then I just kind of like scooched over, and he was like, oh yes, and then but actually before I made that move, it's like my ritual. Like before every flight, I like do like a little prayer, just so I like hoping that I don't die. And then like he had seen me pray, so he was like, "Do you get nervous in flights?" And then hence the conversation started. So I was like, "No, but like it's a ritual." And then he was asking, "Are you a student?" I'm like, "No, I work here, and I'm going back after a very long business trip." And then so I have to ask back, like, were you traveling? And then it all began. And then like for 3-4 hours, like we were talking, and sometimes we would fall asleep, and then he'd pick it back up, so I have to talk again. And like a part of me was so excited that I got to talk to a new person.
Yeah.
But a part of me was just like, I want to watch my Netflix. But he was just a very good sport, and he had just been a soccer player for 15 years of his life, went to the military a little bit late, and then had finished his service just a month before, and had spent 2 weeks traveling all across California. Like he was in Las Vegas, he was in LA, San Francisco, and he was going back after the 2 weeks. And he was in this state where he was super motivated, and he wants to, this is like a new chapter of his life that is beginning brand new. So he had also been watching some EO videos, and from which he recognized me from. So I was like, oh God. So I talked about like our business model to him, and he had a bunch of questions about our media. So we talked about that too.
Wow.
But anyways, like he was apparently just in this phase of saying like, I'm gonna like break out of my shell and talk to more people. So he had read somewhere that only introverts never talk to people on the plane. So he was like, nah, I'm going to be an extrovert this time, and just kind of picked up a conversation with me. So I was kind of like his scapegoat for having to do the conversation, but it was great. It was great.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I think it's a great example. And like even one of the things that I'm very excited about with K-Bridge is for like Korean Americans that come to Seoul for the first time, there isn't that great like infrastructure of like, here is what you should do, and here are the communities that are available that if you have these particular interests, you can get plugged into very quickly. Usually it takes a few like weeks or months even to get exposed to some like resources, right? And I feel like my gateway in terms of understanding the kind of like Seoul startup ecosystem like was you, because that was really helpful, right? But that's not a scalable solution, unfortunately. And the same thing in reverse is if there's like Korean heritage person born and raised in Korea, and then they're moving to the Bay Area for the first time, is like where do you point them to as a starting point to find like their communities and to build a network with their own interests. And I feel like there's a lot of like infrastructure that can be developed, like maybe digital infrastructure to facilitate more of that. So that's one thing I'm very excited about. But in terms of like the EO studio, like one of the interesting things is right before the K-Bridge event, right? You hosted like a bit of a launch party, right?
Yeah.
Or it wasn't a launch party; it was a 400,000 subscriber party,
yeah.
right? Could you share a little bit about that development? Was that a more spontaneous thing that you decided to do as well?
Yes, that was very spontaneous. And actually, one of the reasons why I was kind of worried about the K-Bridge event is because just 2 days before the K-Bridge event, I had hosted that watch party. And actually that watch party, so a little bit of background is we just reached our 400K subscribers for the global channel. It's not a huge number, but it's like a milestone on the way.
Yeah.
So I thought it was like a good excuse to host like a small meetup where we would gather some of our subscribers based in the Bay Area to meet for the first time. And I thought it was good for many reasons, but first because we just we just hired 5 more producers to our team. So our team is very new, and they had just come over to our Palo Alto office just 2 weeks ago. So I kind of actually wanted to do it more for my team rather than the subscribers. I wanted my team to meet the people that they are building the content for, and to become more motivated, because these people are here because they like our content.
Yes.
Like that's such a good kind of feeling to have when you're building something, right? So I just kind of wanted them to have a chance to interact with more people based in the Bay and have a good time to kick off their US journey.
Yeah.
So that was actually my biggest reasons for hosting
cool.
it. And then so I hosted it, and then the setup was that I would make my producers, like Taeyong, our team lead Konuk, and our producer Yoonjin, I would make them each pick a video that they want to showcase to our subscribers, go up on stage and explain to them a little bit of a behind story behind the video and why they want to recommend it to the audience. So it was like me forcing them to do it because I wanted them to be more like out there and have that experience of sharing in front of a large group. And then they complied, and then so it was like a watch party where we showcased 4 videos. Each of the producers would come up and share a little bit about it, and then we had about like 30 people who were at the venue.
Wow.
In San Francisco. And it was with a good friendship with another community that's building, that's like for AI builders. Like they have this really amazing space. So they let us use the space. So everything was just well set up, but it was a huge learning experience because it wasn't exactly how I wanted it to be. Like the vibe wasn't exactly how I wanted it to be. I was less prepared to like in terms of just the tech, like and like switching over to different videos, like there was a little bit of a mix up there. And then the show turnout rate wasn't that great. So my expectation for the event and how it turned out was very different. Although people seemed to have fun, I just hoped that it would be a bit different. So I think it was a good like call for me to understand our next chapter in SF will have to be very, very hardcore because I want this to work. So there's a lot more that I can improve on in terms of building community in SF who like to watch our content and are willing to come to our events.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, it's I think it's another good example of like you just decided to try it and you learn from it, and then I'm sure it'll be better the next time you iterate on it, you know. But event stuff is so tricky. Like there's so many variables to get right, and that's why I have a lot of respect for what you do.
I feel like though it's like the work is as easy as you make it, and then also as hard as you make it. Like if you stress over it, it becomes a difficult job. But if you don't stress over it, it becomes less difficult. Like that's how I like to think about it.
Yes.
So I'm like, I'll just like whip it out and see, like just have that chill attitude, and then if it works out, great. Like yay, like it's all due to the people who came kind of mindset.
Well, I really like the intent or around the idea, because it does seem to me like organizations where you can see the people that are making the product and you like have some sort of a relationship with them, it makes it a lot more approachable and interesting, I feel. And so like I know you've had videos like EO videos with you right on there, and like even hosting events where the producers can, it makes it feel more real rather than it just being like a subscriber count on a screen, right? And there's like a level of accountability and like also excitement that comes with it too. So I feel like the types of companies, like media companies that will succeed in the future are those where that relationship with the audience exists and that like level of accountability also exists. Because sometimes and this is I think why some of the K-Bridge events have been well received, is because as soon as you get to see in person, like, oh, there's a bunch of people from different Korean heritage, like this is a real thing, it makes the digital interaction a lot more like digestible, I guess, or a lot more interesting. And I always feel from a personal standpoint, if I'm having online interactions with somebody, I can get to know them decently well. But as soon as I have a conversation with them, it like changes the whole dynamic. Like I feel like I know that person so much more well, and it makes the digital communication a lot better as well. And so I think that's, you know, I hat tip to you guys for trying to make the effort to do that.
Yeah. I mean, we did one in SF, so you'll be able to spring out new ones in all over the world.
Yeah. In terms of what you have learned over the past, I guess like it's been 2 years since you've been doing like event stuff, maybe longer than that.
Around that, yeah.
Yeah. Like your, the types of events that you're hoping to host, the like preparation involved, like your overall learnings of what makes a successful event versus not. I mean, I'm sure it depends on the purpose of the event and the types of people that you're trying to bring together. But do you feel like, compared to when you first started, not just from a management perspective, but realizing like what it takes to pull together a successful event, like are there some insights even over the last 6 months that you have learned?
Right. When I first hosted my very first like EO meetup, my idea of a successful event would be like where like people came, like the turnout rate was good, and then like everyone was talking, music was blasting, and we have like some great photos. Like that was sort of my idea of like what a great event would look like from an end point of view.
Yeah.
But quickly after that, I think I realized, I think it's also something I recently wrote on my LinkedIn, is like event is like, it's like a very weird thing because it's like the beginning of something, but also the end of something. Like it's the end of all of my preparations, like all of my marketing, all of my like reach outs coming together at this event, right? So from a provider's perspective, event is the end product. Like I have put this show on and I am finally done. So after that, I go home and crash, right? So that's that. But then it's also it's beginning for the people who come, right? So you have to facilitate the real value happens after the event. Like the people you met at this event, it's about how much more they like catch up on their own, like how many new friends you end up making, or how many, like something that they learn that they cherish and apply to their work.
Yes.
Like that is the real value that the event gives, and it can only be measured after the event, after all of the photos are taken.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's what's so hard for someone who works on events, is that you think you're done, but it's beginning. Like you have to like send the follow-up emails. You have to like see what's going on, see the real value. You maybe can catch a call with some people who were there and see what they found more valuable about it. I think if you don't do that and just host event after event, just like blasting out, like maybe you get like a good followership of the people who just attended them.
Right.
But it doesn't amass into an actual community where people have higher expectations for the next event. I think building up that like expectation and excitement for the next one, and the people that you're gonna meet, is so important in making this sustainable. So I guess it's like the realizing of how endless of a cycle it is. And that's like one thing, I guess. And so like for me, like this year and moving forward also, event isn't the only thing I do at EO. So it's always been something, it's kind of been my comfort zone at some points, because it's something that I've done most of the time. So like, I know I can whip out a meetup and I'll just like do it. But it's like, no, I have to actually think about how this actually will translate into a better outcome.
Sure.
Like how better and more accurate targeted it is or whatnot. Like reading the Art of Gathering has been really helpful in that sense, because it talks about how important it is to have a very specific goal, and then if you have that, then you can make it more interesting. It's not you don't put out events just like by choosing a category and putting on the operational work. It's about a bit before that, defining the very purpose and how differently you can approach it to make it more valuable. So I guess like that's been like my biggest like thought recently. And hopefully this year, like what I'm hoping to do is more small, like consistent dinners and little gatherings where people, I will curate people on a much smaller basis, and therefore it will lift off a lot of the pressure about having to have enough RSVPs. It's about just like having a few people together, but then it will be a great conversation. That I think I want to be slowly building that up. And through that, hopefully more towards the middle of the year or fall, I'm hoping to host something much bigger. So it's like it'll be a whole cycle. Like we'll have like slowly building up a community, and then they will be my ambassadors to spread the word about the bigger event that I end up hosting later.
Amazing.
And then hopefully it can be something that can help EO build a stronger community of founders and partners in the Bay.
Wow. Very exciting. Well, as the developments and the planning are underway, like keep me posted, because hopefully the K-Bridge ecosystem, or at least I can like share the stuff that you're working on. And, you know, in terms of defining at least one metric of success, it's like how many ideas can come to life or be sustained, because like K-Bridge can be helpful in some dimension, you know? And so it always excites me when I hear new people that I've had like many conversations with, whether they're like a founder or like an event organizer or an investor, like find new opportunities just from meeting different people within the ecosystem, or like going onto the podcast and all of that stuff. So I'm very excited about what you have in store for the rest of the year, and I'm very grateful that you are kind of the pioneer on many levels with K-Bridge and the first recurring podcast guest. So thanks for doing it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Amazing. All right.